In this series of videos, I'll show you how to go from zero to deployment of a REST API application. I'll be using Python's FastAPI package to implement the API, along with SQL Alchemy to connect to a SQLite and eventually PostgreSQL database. Then I'll containerize the application using Docker and deploy it along with a database server to Microsoft Azure Container Apps. For the development environment, I'll be using Visual Studio Code with several extensions installed. Let's set that up first. With Visual Studio Code open, click the Extensions icon in the sidebar, or use the keyboard shortcut Ctrl-Shift-X, which is Command-Shift-X on Mac OS. At the top of the Extensions panel, search for Python. Install the extension from Microsoft. It should be at the top, as it has long been the most popular extension for Visual Studio Code. Next, return to the Extensions panel and search for Black. Install the one from Microsoft. Black is a code formatter that will ensure the code is consistently spaced and indented. You can configure it in the settings, but the defaults will work for this app. You do need to tell Visual Studio Code to use the Black formatter by default. Press Ctrl-Shift-P or Command-Shift-P on Mac OS to open the command palette. Search for the command Preferences Open Settings UI. Now search for Format. Click on the drop-down list in Editor Default Formatter and select Black. Also, check the box in Editor Format on Save. Close all tabs with the keyboard shortcut Ctrl-K followed by W. And for now, these are the only extensions we'll need. As we continue to build out the app, I'll install other extensions. Using the keyboard shortcut Ctrl-Backtick on all platforms, open the integrated terminal. Since I'm on Windows Subsystem for Linux, I'll be using Bash, but everything should be the same or similar for PowerShell or ZSH on other platforms. I'll create a new folder for the demo app and change into it. Next, I'll use the venv module distributed with Python to create a new virtual environment. Now I need to open the demo app folder in Visual Studio Code. Click on the Explorer icon in the sidebar, or use the keyboard shortcut Ctrl-Shift-E, which is Command-Shift-E on Mac OS, and click the Open Folder button. Navigate to the demo app folder and open it. If there is already a folder open, use the keyboard shortcut Ctrl-K followed by F to close it. Now press Ctrl-Shift-P or Command-Shift-P on Mac OS to open the command palette again. This time, search for the command Python Select Interpreter. This will show a list of Python environments you can associate with this folder. Visual Studio Code will usually detect a virtual environment in the open folder and point it out to you. Now when you open the integrated terminal again, you'll see that Visual Studio Code has automatically activated the virtual environment in the terminal. Next, you'll need to install a couple of Python packages. The FastAPI package contains the FastAPI framework modules. You'll also need Uvicorn. This is an ASGI server that will run the FastAPI application. Use pip to install both. Hover over the top of the Explorer panel and click the icon to create a new file. Name it main.py. Import the FastAPI class from the FastAPI module. Next, create a new instance of the FastAPI class. Now create a function that will handle HTTP requests. Keeping the tradition, this first function will greet the user saying, "Hello FastAPI." For FastAPI, the function needs to return a value that can be converted to JSON. We'll use a Python dictionary this time. We need to map a URL to the handler function. Apply the getDecorator from the app and pass it a string representing the URL to match the handler. In this case, we'll use the root. Save the file and notice that the black formatter adds spacing to the code. To run the application, invoke uvicorn from the command line. It expects the name of the FastAPI app, which here is app, inside of the main module. It won't make any difference now, but in the future it will be useful to include the -- reload option that will watch for changes in the code and restart the server if needed. Now it's time to try out the API. A client is needed for this, and FastAPI comes with one out of the box. The development server runs on port 8000 by default. Go to a browser and head to the URL of the application, and the demo web client is located at the URL /docs. To interact with an endpoint, expand an item. Here I'll open the only one available for the root of the API. Click the Try It Out button to configure an HTTP request. There are no options for this endpoint, so click the Execute button. Now scroll down slightly and you can see the response. As expected, the body of the response includes the greeting returned in the JSON data from the Hello World function. That's how easy it is to get started. In the next video, we'll see how to build a complete REST API. The API will implement functions to respond to each of the HTTP methods get, post, put, and delete. And you'll see how FastAPI makes use of modern Python development features.